Welcome to The Lumber Word, where industry veterans Matt Beamer, Greg Riley, Charles Dilatori, and Ashley Buckhold dissect the world of commodity lumber each week. We bring you up-to-date insights on supply, demand, and market trends, plus use our combined experience to tell you what it all means. Join us for informative and entertaining discussions that guarantee to make you wiser about all things lumber.
Everybody, welcome to this week's episode of The Lumber Word, episode 124. Got a great guest on, Russ Taylor from Russ Taylor Global, and Russ is literally just landed in the last 24 hours from Europe. Thanks for coming on today, Russ.
Hot off the press. I love it.
So to speak, absolutely.
So, Greg, Charles, Matt's, we were just talking, Matt's over in Rome right now, doing what the Romans do, and we had a short week this week. We'll just do a quick update on lumber. I know on our side, the spruce side, 2x4 14s and 16s, 2x4 104 and 5/8 studs seem to be good items. Moving up, 9-footers just keep moving up. I did look at last week's random, and everything except for some of those items printed down. Charles, what did the pine side do this week and last week?
Depends who you ask and what you're buying.
I'm asking you, what are you buying?
I'm not buying anything because Ash's getting sick of my gray area answers. I noticed that's the first time he's caught on to that in a long time.
That was perfect. Hey, well, okay, what do you?
I mean, 6-inch is cheap, 12-inch cheap, 4-inch has still got a little bit to go. I mean, buying deals, investment level stuff. I don't know that we have a whole heck of a lot that's going to change the current status quo.
Well,
Get one.
It's going to have to change, Charles. When you're looking at outside of East Side 4-inch.
No, I mean, nobody's making any money, Greg.
I mean, if you're looking at like most all the rest of that stuff's trading in like in the mid high 200s or low to mid 300s.
Yep,
that's fiber costs in the Southeast, Russ. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, that $300 is cheap, but yeah, the mills are getting more than that right now on average. But according to my data, the U.S. South should be doing pretty well given their log costs.
What do you figure the log cost is right now in the U.S. South? Dollars per thousand.
I'm seeing, well, especially I look at more of the Southwest, but that's around 45. Well, I use in dollars per cubic meter, $45 to $50 a cubic meter. That's cheapest in North America.
So what does that convert to in dollars per thousand at the gate?
I mean, Gatewood in the U.S. South right now is anywhere from $38 to $42 a ton. So you figure you got 25 tons on a truck, you're going to get about 5,500 board foot. Call it 6,000 board foot a truck, right? So if you're spending 42 times 25, it's 1050 divided by 6, $175. Yep. And then you got to add 110 in processing, $300.
You're at, somewhere like you're at $300. And so like if you're getting less than that for 2 and better and with your low grade, that's essentially you're saying you're at break even right now, Charles, basically, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But see, now that log cost is that I just utilized is very geographically isolated in the state of South Carolina because we've had so many paper mills shut down. So log prices, saw timber prices have dropped. Central Georgia is probably in the mid 50s per ton.
Oh, so then your cost is more like in the
325
to 340 range, and
yep.
That's the same as like if you're looking at a $45 cost, you're over 300. So
yep.
Yeah.
All right. So are we making money or not making money in the South?
We're right on the.
Today you're probably not making money, but you're not necessarily at shutdown costs yet. But
if you do it for 2.5 years, though, I mean, some people get tired of it. I've had some real interesting conversations with some people about that, and it's a real interesting time from a lot of people's perspective because history is repeating itself. And as Greg, you like to say, the market will always return to the spot that causes the most pain. Well, July and August of last year in the pine business was the most pain, right? I mean, it fell off a cliff, and you could buy number 2 6-inch for $215, $220, and 4-inch in the mid threes. So I don't know, with all of the environmental forces that are currently active, that's going to change that unless you have another supply curtailment.
Yeah, and then as we all know, everybody can lose money for a little while, but nobody can lose money forever. And typically curtailments, they happen. You actually get more curtailments after the market's actually bottomed and is actually moving higher. That's when you actually get more, because of the lag factor, right?
Yep.
I mean, we're talking about numbers now that there's guys up in, the bean counters aren't going to be reporting those numbers to management for another, 45 to 60 days.
Yep.
Does that kind of square what you're thinking on pine?
Yeah. In fact, I've been still in a bit of jet lag mode, and I've been trying to update my files this morning, trying to get it all straight. But ask me a question, I go, huh? But I have this kind of the.
That's why we had you on today, Russ. We wanted that great feedback.
I wanted to look smart. As long as you agree with me, Russ, we're all good. That's it.
It was funny. I have exactly 175 for my U.S. Southwest.
Oh, look at that!
There you go. Okay,
man.
Charles, in your quick calculation, you need to be in my kitchen when we're baking, and I'm trying to convert metric over to say size or whatever it is, right?
I don't know, man. I'm not very good at cooking.
So, Russ, I like that. That was a good exchange. Russ, you were over in Europe. There are a couple events going on, or what event were you at this week or last week?
So there's every 2 years or so there's been this Gerald Swaghofer of HS Timber. Anyways, his family has a foundation, and they do an award ceremony for innovations in timber and research, sort of R&D. So it's they had like about 900 people attending. And then the day before, all the international people, up to 150, 175, go out on a day trip. So it's great to network with all the international people on the first day, and then you get to meet all the Europeans on the second day. So it's at the end of the deal, there's a 300,000 euros prize given to the best concept in new wood products research or R&D type thing. So it's a pretty big deal over there, and so it's a great place.
Who was the winner this year?
The winner was a group from which university was it now? I think it was one of the European universities, and it's to do with using lignin to densify wood and make it more durable and more insect resistant. And the chemical they use is a byproduct from pulp mills, and there's ample available. So it's a scalable business, which is kind of interesting with leftover byproducts.
Now, there was, from what I understand, there were U.S. mills, there are Canadian mills. It's a big turnout of people.
Yeah, they had, I think they said something like all continents represented and something like 35 or 40 countries.
Wow.
As well.
Now, do they sit any of the people from the coalition next to the Canadian mills, or how does everybody get along real well? No.
Well, I don't think they were invited.
Okay.
But I see the coalition.
Yeah.
A lot of it's traders though too. It's a lot of the U.S. traders are showing up. I don't think I saw any of the mill people there, but a lot of the trade. Okay. One mill guy I saw, but a lot of the traders show up for that event and visit with customers.
So before we get on this call, I got off the phone with somebody, and I got to tell you, we've had this conversation about what's going to happen with the cost of production, and as we reconfigure the AD anti-dumping countervailing duty going forward, what month it's going to kick in, is there going to be a quota system and all that? Coming back from there, what's your kind of prognostication and what's your feeling on cost of production in different parts of North America, Canada, Pacific Northwest, we covered the South, over in Europe and the different regions, and then what do you see going forward on all this conversation? We'll talk about the supply side first.
Well, yeah, I mean, before you do that, like, what's a general sense from Europe about what they're going to be doing in the U.S. market for the balance of the year? I'm hearing reports that there's vessels that, guys are trying to scrounge up enough lumber to load.
Yeah, there's a bit of that going on. I mean, like when I arrived in Vienna, the next morning the U.S. was imposing 50% duties on Europe on everything, right? And then the next day it's off again, right? So that was sort of the pretext for the mood of the Europeans. Were kind of like, God, we just can't predict anything. There's no hard to do business. But their costs, though, when you come back to there's lots of supply. That's the problem. Lots of supply. Logs are getting very expensive, though, in Europe. They keep going up. So their costs of production keep going up. And as U.S. lumber prices keep going down or stay low, they're on a real squeeze play. So U.S.'s market is not very attractive to, Sweden, Germany, Austria, even Finland as the four major suppliers. And with their log costs, I mean, we talked about in terms of cubic meters, dollars per cubic meter, the U.S. South is like $45-50 a cubic meter. European lumber is in Germany is up to 120 euros a cubic meter. That's what is that? That's
Whoa.
about $135. That's roadside. You haven't even got it to the mill yet. So they're about 145, 150 bucks delivered to the mill, U.S. dollars. So that's 3 times the U.S.
That's
South. And
log costs in cubic meters.
log costs. Yeah. So log
Whoa.
costs. So you do your math again, Charles, and we'll get the right answer here with
You're
dollars per
about-
thousand feet.
You said it's what, 125?
Say it's 145 U.S. dollars delivered to the mill.
Okay.
I probably
Like
have that
5.
actually.
It's like 520.
Yeah.
It's like 525.
No, it's 437.
Yeah, I'm about 400. Yeah, so up about that level. Oh no, I'm even no. Yeah, exactly. You're right, Charles. That's right. They're right again.
Oh
So-
boy, zing, Greg.
And if if they have beetle killed wood like in Germany or Austria, that's going to help. Like last year, Austria, about 50% of all the wood processed was beetle wood. That helps them. But as the beetle wood keeps running out, they're going to be looking at green wood, which is getting really, really expensive. And some of the alternatives they have to start. I mean, pine is cheaper in Europe, but Douglas fir is getting more popular in larch in Europe, and that's up around $130, $150 a cubic meter, euros a cubic meter. So very expensive wood if you want to try and replace spruce or pine. So they're really getting squeezed, and they're being announced in Sweden. There's now at least three
Didn't
sawmills
Malvern or however
closing.
yeah. Oh wow.
Correct. Malvern
Permanently.
and Holman.
Or-
And permanently, and one more as well. I can't remember who it was, but that's all in the works too. So they're getting squeezed by tight log supplies and high log prices. So they're going to need much higher prices to come into the U.S. market and stay. But they have to look at, got to keep your mill running, and where's your best return, or how far can you go down into the negative margins. And so I think with the way U.S. prices are right now, they're going to be kind of backing off a bit and trying to see if they can push it more into the Middle East or North Africa. That was the scuttlebutt I got there. But they're all looking ahead, saying, okay, duties increasing on Canadian lumber. Okay, prices have got to go up. I agree. So they're kind of waiting for that, and that timing is probably August, right, when those duties will finally kick in, approximately. So that's going to raise the cost of Canadian lumber. That's going to push prices up, we hope, to keep the Canadians in the game, or have curtailments until there's enough curtailments to push the prices higher and bring the Europeans back.
That's the thing is like, the prospect of, the prospects of curtailing production don't raise prices. We've been now for the last, 18 to 24 months in a supply push market coming off post-COVID. And we had a good number on Friday in new home sales that was up well above expectation and dropped the inventory of new homes down to 8.1 months, which isn't too bad. But I mean, it is a challenging environment. I mean, when you look at, long-term interest rates in the U.S. are not coming down; they're staying in the high 6% range. The articles on the builder stocks earnings reports were muted in that their use of incentives, whether that's throwing in upgrades, buying down mortgages, everything short of cutting the price of the homes has kind of run its course. And now there's new home sales have been in a sweet spot for the last 12 to 18 months because the inventory of existing homes has been so low. The inventory of existing homes now is up 20% year over year. And we're seeing, lots of the hottest markets being up 40 to 50% in terms of supply, and a lot of price pressure and price pressure coming up on the existing homes. So there's definitely going to be a squeeze. And I think the expectation, we were expected this year to be, kind of flattish at best. And that's probably optimistic right now from a demand side. To all of our producers that, are listening to this, I mean, we got hope in one hand and shit in the other right here, right now, guys. Put them together.
And I agree. I agree with you, Greg. I think the new residential construction market is going to be flat at best, with everything, as you just said, high inventory of homes and high mortgage rates. Consumer confidence is down. Even repair and remodeling. Looking at the Home Depot, they're expecting 1% same store sales this year. Lowe's about maybe half of that, half a percent. So that's no real growth in there either. No big renovation projects, mainly small things. So that's going to be a push as well. So we don't have the two biggest, 80% of the market, or 75%, I guess, is going to be flat, at best. So not going to be a great market, and all this supply is kind of hanging around. And so I think we have to have curtailments and even some few more permanent closures to make things even balance out a little bit in the short term.
Where's the highest cost for that? I mean, we've already seen British Columbia, and when we were up at your event, that's, from what I can see, is the highest cost producing region, correct?
Yeah, it's the not so much the highest cost region, but the lowest margin, I guess, is the way to look at it.
Lowest margin, yeah.
And so it's the same sort of thing. But I look at the margins, and I just did some work this morning, and looking at the current with 14.4% duties on and the current prices, which keep coming off. BC's in a not quite, maybe break even at best situation. The rest of Canada is kind of some skinny margins, and so then the U.S. West has probably got maybe the best margins right now, but their lumber prices have been coming off pretty quickly lately too. So not a happy situation, certainly for the Canadians, and with the prospects of duties going up another 20%, so up from 14 to 34%. That's going to push, according to my calculations, BC Mills will still be the weakest, lowest margin player, probably going to be offside at current prices, probably offside by $60-$70 a negative. And then the rest of Canada, probably half of that, maybe $30-$40 negative with those duties.
What do you think your current cost is in BC right now? Dollars per thousand?
Dollars per thousand. So on a total mill basis, with duties in, how do I put this into perspective? Their total costs are around $350, excluding duties, and then you add the duties back in, and it pushes them up to about $400. So that's kind of where they're sitting.
So 500 and something ish Chicago delivered.
Yeah. On a 2x4 basis. Russ is talking about total. So it's,
total mill.
You'd have to take the 400 and divided by probably 0.85 to get what the on grade 2 and better price is, and that's so that puts it to 470.
Yeah,
right, on a 2x4 basis.
And then you see what 2x6 and low grade and all that's trading at. That's
right.
That's tough.
Where you use the 0.85 to get to like what a 2x4 equivalent is, and so that puts it at basically 580 Chicago cost.
Yeah, that's about right. I kind of look at the sales average, then I try and throw it back on a 2x4 basis. If you add about $50 to the sales average, you get into a 2x4 equivalent, you're sort of 85%, Greg, I think. So yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Hey, Russ, just a quick question on like one of the biggest items that we saw taking some of the 2x12 and 2x6, we see taking big chunks out, trading off pretty hard. At mills, are 2x6s or 2x12s something that's just the easiest thing to run, and sometimes to try to lower costs, they run those products through? Or am I thinking about that incorrectly?
Well, 2x6 will get you more, more volume with the same lineal throughput. So that's always what mills like to do, and 2x8s even more so. 2x12s, it's just a matter of the logs, and you get a big chunk of wood, 3 times the volume than 2x4. So it's a good production item, but it's coming out of a more expensive log. That's all.
Sure.
Not a lot of those logs
So,
in BC.
And here's a question. Speaking of logs in BC and Canada in general, and I think this is a good question for you, Russ. I mean, I've always hypothesized, well, not always, but I hypothesized that the log size up there is kind of prohibitive towards Canadians producing a lot of 6-inch and wider due to, and I say that from a pricing perspective, right? If you look at the historic spreads over the past 2 to 5 years of 2x6 spruce versus 2x6 pine, the only thing that comes to mind is the raw material is either a lot more expensive to produce it on the same level as 4-inch, or that size log just isn't readily available. So my question is which one of those is right?
It's probably more the wood size, because in the east, of course, it's all smaller wood. So you only get 2x4s, maybe some 2x6s. In the west, the log size is getting smaller, especially with now BC, they're banning all the old growth, so you can't go after the big logs, and you're looking at smaller wood anyways. So and the average size log in BC, average processed log is about 7.5 inches diameter, right? That's on average. You get a lot of small wood, but you get a lot of really big wood too. So it's been really coming down over time. So the average, the ability to find the wood is really the biggest issue, more and more, and you can't find it in Canada.
So we've noticed like the CME keeping a decent premium. A little bit of that's gotten taken out this week, but anticipating this change at some point in the future or anticipating curtailments when the new numbers come in. How do you see it? How do you see it play out? When do you see some of this stuff kicking in? And what's the feel out there for when this is going to happen?
In terms of what? Sorry,
in terms of, we can already see the futures where everybody thinks the move in price is going to come. It's got pretty decent.
September right now is $50 above the current cash market, right?
Yeah, which is it definitely doesn't take into account the full amount, but that's about as much as you can get in of a premium in anticipation of extra CVD 80 coming in.
Exactly. So, I mean, I think there's going to be some, in terms of Canada, I think there's going to be there'll be curtailments in BC. I think there's going to be a closure of a mill or two. There's still not enough wood to run all the mills. A lot of mills are only running one shift. And the government's taking away, constraining the wood supply further with all their new forest policies, endless policies. So that's going to take a while for that to ever switch to a higher harvest. So in the interim, there's going to be probably some curtailments, permanent curtailments, permanently, and then curtailments until the prices start to move up, and that's going to try and balance. That's
a great point, right, Russ? Up in BC, they basically have to build a log deck. Once you build a log deck, you got X amount of months of running, right, so to speak. So I guess, are some of these mills already slowing down logging and building, and do they have a smaller log deck than they traditionally would this time of year?
Well, they're trying to ramp up the logging as much as they can, but weather is an issue, and also the availability of cutting permits from the government. This has been a big issue. So a lot of mills have had to run one shift because they don't have the logs, and waiting for either permits or waiting for government policy issues to kind of give them a green light. But in some cases, that's going to take a long time. So the BC industry is really fighting an uphill battle with all these different issues. Mainly, the beetlewood is not the issue anymore. It's the government policies and everything else. So really tough place to do business in BC unless you've got a lot of your own secure timber under forest licenses. And most of them are struggling to find an open market wood, which is high priced. And that high priced wood, which goes through what's called BC timber sales, which is 20% of the so-called harvest, that gets priced into the rest of the 80% that's public timber. And so it raises the overall cost of logs, and sort of an endless spiral. And so, BC's log costs are probably some of the highest in North America because of the way the whole stumpage system works and the availability of wood. So that's why BC stayed the high cost producer for, the last 10 years or so, struggling to get wood and enough wood to run the mills on 2 shifts, let alone survive on 1 shift. That's been a challenge.
So on the U.S. side, there's been talk about the U.S. being more self-sufficient, producing their own fiber. Have you seen anything indicative of that? As far as you hear about some of the federal lands potentially looking to be open and so forth. Are you following any of that in the U.S. here to see if there's any movement there?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's a great strategy to try and produce more lumber in the U.S. and open up more national forests. But of course, they've laid off a lot of the national forest workers, as part of DOGE. So that's a problem. But all that takes time. It's going to take, got to find got to get the timber, laid out and so forth and approved by government. Then you got to get logging capacity and logging trucks and loggers and everything else going. And that's going to take time.
There's not a lot of new loggers coming out of high school taking the logging class in the U.S.
No,
yeah, exactly.
No, there's not.
That's right.
No, I mean, so really, I see that's the big issue.
Yeah, so that's a great strategy.
The reality is the ability to substantively increase. U.S. production can be increased marginally right now, marginally at best. But substantive increase, like to replace 1 billion board feet of lumber, is 3 years would take. 5 to 7 probably. Yes. Okay. Yeah. If you started today and you said, "Hey,
I agree with that.
We're going to put all these pieces in place so that we can produce 1 billion board feet more," right?
The supply chains. That's the error that a lot of people are overlooking. 110%.
So it's like, do we have the trees? Yes. Do we have the ability?
We don't have a way to get it from point A to point B. And Greg, to your point though, as we've discussed before, as far as the increased U.S. production, you look at it from a minor tweak, and as far as expediency, 5%, I think, is what we established the last time we had this conversation. 5% within 12 months. And then from there, it's a 3 to 7 year process to get anything else of substance that can tangibly take that fiber and turn it into lumber. So no, it's a big problem, man.
Well, and the reality is we're at a point in time where it's like, hey, lumber's at best a break-even business right now. So, hey, let's invest a whole lot. Let's invest a whole lot of capital in that. No. Let's build some server farms and some quant stuff and put money into nuclear energy. It was interesting. I was having this conversation over the weekend about, like the whole idea of like reshoring lots of businesses and being more self-sufficient in businesses. And, one of the points that one of the people brought out is, you think about it, there's a lot of things that we import from all over the world that environmentally, we really don't want to be making or doing here. And I'm not to say making more lumber is one of those, but I thought it was just a really interesting point. Hey, rare earth minerals, we have just as many as anybody else, but it's one of the most environmentally dangerous and hazardous things that you can do is deal with processing that. It's really, really messy. Hey, refining uranium for nuclear energy, that really, really messy. But so I just found that an interesting aside, So
yeah, be careful what you wish for, right? Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, with all the things that we're doing as a country with workforce and employees, right, and able-bodied individuals, we're in a position to where we would still have to find a way to create the supply chain for the automation to make it fiscally acceptable for us to manufacture that, which is another 5 to 10 years, right? I mean, you're talking about robot technology that we're buying from another country. They're not gonna sell it to us because we stopped sending sheets over there to get sewn together, right? Like it's counterintuitive. So there's got to be a fine line to figure out what works and what fits. I mean, we're just as the U.S. we've balanced this very, very delicately over the past 35 years. And
so Ash, a lot of people listen to the podcast because, well, so I guess I shouldn't say a lot of people. Some of them listen to it because, you know, they find us, you know, interesting and entertaining. Some of them listen to us because they find that, you know, we have great guests like Russ, who's one of our top guests, very informative, very knowledgeable. You know, and some of them listen to us to get trading insight and advice as to what to do in the marketplace. So, you know, I felt like last week's pod was we started out, we were very, very negative about the market. Then we got kind of positive. We got really bullish. Then we went negative again.
Bipolar. We were bipolar.
Where are we this week? Where are we this week? Are we bulled up, or do we got the bearskin coat on?
So,
Charles?
I don't know. I was waiting for you to finish your statement. I just didn't want to interrupt you, you know?
yeah.
Here's your chance.
No, I'll let Ash lead the way.
So they put in random last week. It was a bipolar market. Greg, thanks. And, you know, we come in every day and 1 minute we're bullish, 1 minute we're bearish. But the way that we do stuff from a hedge standpoint, the best thing to happen for us would be for the market to go up. If it goes down, that's fine too. I'm getting the feeling now that the mills have not done enough to clean up some things. I'm seeing more, unfortunately, I'm seeing more millwood at reloads. I don't think they built an order file. I think we had a little push. And we had some people padding their inventory last week. I'm still having a hard time getting a hold of the whole supply thing here. And like Russ and you guys were saying, at best, we're going to be flat. That's a really simple way of saying that, you know, nobody ever wants to say it's going to be a negative year. So we just say it's going to be flat, right? As far as demand. And it just feels like the market is going to slow down over the next 2 or 3 weeks here. And I feel that's going to be lower numbers on some certain things if we really can go lower than we already are. That's how I feel about it.
I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Russ. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you go back a year ago when prices were even lower, how long did it take for mills to sort of finally stop production? And we got those 20 mills that actually closed last year, about 3 billion board feet of production. It took a long time to get that out of the system. I'm looking at my data kind of going, you know what, all the mills are kind of making money right now in North America. BC's about break even, you know, and until we get sort of that supply constraining itself, it's going to just keep pushing prices lower, I think, until we do get into curtailment. So I don't see.
And as Greg said, break even doesn't shut mills down.
Nope, not at all. No,
Charles.
So that's why I think it's going to get weaker before it gets better.
To piggyback on what you said, Ash, I think everybody should go home. It's too boring.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like Greg, I heard Greg saying on the phone, one of the mills, you got to be cheap.
Ash, I mean, you painted the
be
picture.
busy.
There's no excitement. We're hedged. You know, it could go one way or the other. It's fine.
Yeah, but you still have to sell. You still have to sell lumber every day, right?
I agree with you.
You still have to sell. I'm with
trying
you.
to say it in jest, right? I mean, everybody I talk to is so right? And everybody that has been in the business for the past 5 years there was a certain level of excitement, but now we figure out who can trade and knows how to trade and knows how to strategize and put stuff together that makes sense, right? This is a very difficult time.
This feels like the first 20 years of my career.
It's a very difficult time for a lot of people because they, you know, it's completely different. I had a conversation with a gentleman today, a younger guy, he's 32 years old, works for a big company. And he's like, you know, I don't know how you, get your information. You know, I got 45-year veterans that, you know, kind of give me pointers and this, that, and whatever. And he's like, you know, what I find interesting is I ask them sometimes and they don't even know what the hell's going on. I said, because what's going on is kind of unprecedented in different ways, right? I mean, 2008 was unprecedented in a certain way. And what we're going through right now is unprecedented due to kind of the psychological aspect and the push and pull that is going on in the market. So it'll be interesting to see how the cards fall. But I you know, with a supply push market, it makes it very difficult to trade if you aren't hedged. 100%.
I hate sold some Julys yesterday. I talked to the broker. I go, you know what? I'm just going to sell these and hope I lose money. Right. And like, you know, and so the market's down $10 today. But I'm going but I had an interesting email earlier today from a guy that said, hey, May Southern Pine futures expired at $530 on the 15th, and July's now $427. Is the market really down $100?
Are you talking about pine?
Yeah. May expired at $530 and then July's $427. Is the market really down $100 on East Side 2x4?
Yes. Well, I see. East Side, maybe not, but if you look at the people that may be participating in it, can see it coming because of the different zones that they may be buying lumber in.
So they're trading a different basis relationship with that contract.
Exactly. So if you look at it from a big picture as how the contract may or may not have been set up, good, bad, or indifferent, you can say, okay, well, Central broke before West and East, so I know that at some point both of these guys are going to converge on top of me because I have the cheapest stumpage price in the country historically, and this is the way it goes, so I'm going to short it. But you also need...
Where's the East Side 2x4 buy? Sub 400?
Yeah, all day.
Okay. All right. That's what I thought. You know, Ash and I were talking about that, and we were like going, because we were looking at it, we're going, man, you know what? I mean, maybe if it gets under 400, we'll get interested. But, you know,
I mean, I noticed I didn't get a phone call when you all had that conversation, so you're becoming Pine Pros. I see. That's fine. Next time I have a spruce question, I'll call somebody.
We're asking you now because we hadn't done anything. We were just talking about it, and now we got the input. You know, I don't need to call you every day, Charles. I love you, brother. But, I mean, you know what? I got other things to do.
I get it. Me too.
One question to Russ and everybody else. Everybody, do you think that the feeling out there from a lot of the mills that are at the cost of when they have the conversations of, hey, what are we going to do? Do you think a lot of them, and again, I'm not sitting in any boardroom into these mills, are saying, hey, let's wait until this summer when the CVD and AD come out higher and we should have higher prices then and everything will be okay? Are people wait? It feels like there's a waiting because it always bothers me when 80% of the market tells me that the prices are going to be higher at the end of the year because of that. And that really makes me think that that's not going to be the case, and it worries me. Is there a reason for me to be worried about that?
If you're asking me, I think,
you know, don't worry.
I'm not worried. It's like everybody is sure that we're going to have higher prices in late third, early fourth quarter.
Who's everybody?
Yeah.
I mean, I just think, you know, when you say,
I mean, higher than today, that's not
when
difficult.
You say everybody or nobody, I have to question that. I don't know that that's true. Does everybody think that?
I think it's a matter of perspective, though. I mean, are we higher than, you know, cash traded 2x6 Southern Yellow Pine at 250? Yeah, probably. But I mean, are you at 500 or are you at 310? I mean, I don't know.
Russ had a really good point about how long it took last year. How much lower we were than we are today? We were probably on average $50 to $75 lower than we are today on average. Maybe not quite that much on a mill net total, but certainly lower.
Pretty damn close.
And it took until late July to start seeing those curtailments announced, and you didn't really get the higher prices until September.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess that was a little bit better in August, but
Yeah, and I think you've got all this supply sitting there with the same idea. I mean, certainly U.S. supply. If you think the duties are going to push prices higher, you're probably going to maintain the status quo. The Canadians are going to have to adjust when it's time, but they're going to wait and see, right? See how much
Yeah.
how much they can push the prices through, and all they're trying to do is, the Eastern Canadians or even the prairie provinces, they don't need the full duty to stay cash positive. It's the BC mills that are probably going to be the first one out of the game. So that's going to be a wait and see. It always is a wait and see. It takes longer than you think, and that keeps prices lower, unfortunately.
I mean, over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we should start to get some visibility on summer shutdowns, at least in Eastern Canada, where it's it's locked in with unions and they don't care. The market never matters. They're going to be shut down for those 2 to 3 weeks. And I think the weaker prices are, maybe the more extended it'll be. I don't know that in Western Canada or in the US that's as ingrained as it is. But I would certainly think US South mills would look at July and go, we could make less lumber. It's hot, and these prices aren't very good. And they can adjust so much quicker because how much Gatewood they buy, right, Charles?
Yeah, they can. I mean, it changes things, and there are some privately held organizations that held on to their timberland holdings, which are going to automatically average that cost down too, right? Because how you account for a felled tree versus a bought stick of lumber, two totally different things, because that is a real estate asset versus a physical inventory asset. So there's a lot of different ways that some of these independent guys and timberland owners that own mills can mitigate some of these costs. But at the same time, though, you talk about running an organization at that volume with that amount of money at stake for, pennies, it gets old after a while, So that's my
and
2
also
cents.
just thinking about the U.S. South. I mean, just as a fact, right? I'm watching more about what the U.S. South does, because the U.S. South produces more lumber than all of Canada. I don't know if that's well known or not. That's all BC coast and all the rest of the SPF. It produces more than all of Canada now. So, what happens in the U.S. South does make an impact. Prices have not correlated very well over the last couple of years, but I think they're going to start to correlate a little bit more going forward. And so you got to watch what's happening in the U.S. South with production and any increases or curtailments, because that's going to impact the market as well.
What do we got? Total U.S. South now is over 40% of North America. Russ?
Production, yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, it's 35-40%. It's and rising. Yeah,
It'll be 60 by the end of the year. That's my call.
Hey, Russ, there
you're doing really well for having jetted across across the world there last night.
Yeah, lots of coffee, that helps. Yeah, for sure. But always good to get perspectives. I was going to have one. I'm going to there's a conference in Norway in October, and another one in Sweden in November. I'll be going to, so nothing in between there.
We had a really fun time last October coming up and doing your Global Timber Summit. That was a blast. I mean,
I appreciate the first stamp.
That was great.
My passport, Russ. Thank you.
Yeah,
exactly. I know what you said. Exactly.
Hey, and Russ, maybe you could tell us a little bit about this is real cool. I don't know if I told Greg or Charles the family history of hockey in your family.
Oh, sure. Well, even though I had a chance to follow in my grandfather's footsteps and be a hockey player, but I had a knee injury way back when, so I couldn't do it. But no, my grandfather was a hockey player in the 1900 to 1920 era, and he was kind of the star of the day. He was like the Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, or whatever, Connor McDavid type guy. He was a goal scorer, and so he. And so they only played on weekends. They had to have day jobs back then. But his claim to fame was that when I compare his 20-year career with Wayne Gretzky's 20-year career, not in terms of total points because the games were less, but points per game. Wayne Gretzky was 2.1 points per game. My grandfather was 1.9 points per game total career. Wayne Gretzky scored 0.5 goals per game. My grandfather scored 1.1 goals per game. So he was a goal scorer. That was his big claim to fame. And he was ranked number 8 all time when you consider all the hockey players over 120 years. I think it was, he was ranked number 8. So
What was his name, Russ?
Oh, it was Cyclone Taylor. That was his moniker, Cyclone, because he was a real fast skater, very fast, smaller, like but fast,
a lot of people didn't know that Charles is a hockey player also back in the day.
Used to be, yeah.
He was like a Cuban legend down there on the island. I mean,
he started with roller skates, Greg. Roller skates and a broomstick.
That's cool. Did they retire his number or anything, Russ?
Well, back then it was the team doesn't exist anymore, right? It was called the Vancouver Millionaires, and they went bust somewhere in the 20s or 30s, like probably during the Great Recession. But but no, he won the Stanley Cup for Vancouver. Vancouver's only Stanley Cup, 1914, I think it was. He also won for the Ottawa Senators way back in the day as well.
We need to go on Craigslist and see if we can get his jersey out.
No, Russ was saying you had something in the family, right? You had something of his in the family, right? Still, some of his jersey or something like that.
My cousin's the one buying a lot of that stuff up. Yeah, exactly. He's the one that does all that.
I mean, I like Vancouver Millionaires better than Canucks. I mean,
would it be billion? It would be billionaires today, though.
Billionaires, yeah.
Inflation.
Hey, Russ, real quick for Russ Taylor Global. How do what are your events coming up? How can people get a hold of you and contact you?
Yeah, well, I'm my website, russtaylorglobal.com, and or email russtaylor@russtaylorglobal.com. I'm sort of been quiet the last 3 or 4 months with news and so forth. I'm going to release a couple of things soon, and I'm going to do a rebuttal to my friends at the Softwood Lumber Coalition here shortly about some facts that they got wrong about their story.
Can you give us a little tiny teaser? Can you give us a little teaser to that?
Well, it's the teaser is that when you use statistics and use statistics to prove point, and they've done that. And when you look at some of the capacity numbers, they talked about excess capacity in Canada. False. It's not the number. They've used the wrong data. They've used inaccurate data, which is great to use data, but you have to understand what data really means. So they've used the wrong data. I've got some alternate data to supply, and also some of the calculations about how much incremental lumber has been produced in the U.S. and how much it could actually be used to produce new housing. It's a bit over the top. So anyways, it's just trying to put it all back into perspective. And my whole I look at the big picture and I'm going, you're going to need U.S. or the U.S. needs Canadian lumber imports. If you want to have a long-term strategy, it'll take you 20 to 30 years to get rid of it all. So with a lot of investment, a lot of subsidies, but it's just not quite the easy answer that's been portrayed in the media, and not quite as balanced as it should be. So no one in Canada has really gone after those statements. So we're going to take a crack at it just to kind of provide facts. That's all it is. Here's some facts that are different than the facts in the story that was told earlier.
Yeah, it's a lot like
that's what polling. I do.
It's like if you decide what you want the poll outcome to be, you write the question so that you get that answer. That's how the statistics are. Hey, we wanted to say this, so give us the numbers that justify that, right?
Yeah, I mean, a good statistician or a good accountant, if you want an answer, he says, just tell me the answer you want. I'll find the data to support it, and that's kind of what I see out there, right? So, anyway,
you've been listening to my calls to the CFO, haven't you?
That's awesome.
Russ, always amazing to have you, man. We love you, man. This is great. Great to have you.
Appreciate it, Russ.
Yeah, always happy to be here, guys. Thanks.
All right, guys.
Russ,
everybody have a good rest of your week.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Lumber Word. The Lumberword podcast is dedicated to engaging conversations about the lumber industry, including trading ideas, market trends, and evaluations of overvalued and undervalued assets. We wish to emphasize that the discussions and opinions expressed in this podcast are purely for informational and entertainment purposes. They should not be considered as financial or investment advice. We encourage our listeners to make their own financial decisions, taking into account their unique circumstances and financial goals, and to seek professional financial advice if necessary.